I want to start this confession by saying something many people may never believe. The pastor you see on stage, the one you clap for, the one you call man of God, the one you trust with your life, is not always the man he really is behind the curtains. I know this because I lived that life. For years, I stood in front of thousands, lifting my hands, shouting receive it, and prophesying things that made people fall to their knees. People saw fire in my voice and power in my words. They believed God was using me in a mighty way. But deep inside, I knew what I was carrying was not from God. Let me tell you the truth behind many prophetic churches. Most of them are not powered by prayer. They are powered by things you never want to see with your eyes. You should understand that I, along with many other prophets or pastors, didn't start out as bad men. Like me, I didn't wake up one day and decide to join darkness. It begins slowly, with hunger for power, hunger to be seen, hunger to grow a church. It begins with small compromises that don't look dangerous. Then before you know it, you are standing in a place where your hands are no longer clean. For me, my journey started like every other young pastor. I wanted to serve God. I wanted to preach. I wanted my church to grow. I wanted to be the kind of pastor people respected. And at first, everything was innocent. I prayed. I fasted. I trusted God to build the ministry. But somewhere along the way, things changed. I started seeing things that didn't make sense. Pastors who had nothing suddenly driving cars worth millions. Churches that opened with 10 members and jumped to thousands overnight. Prophets who never prayed, yet spoke with accuracy that even shocked the members. I kept asking myself, how are they doing this? Then I began hearing whispers. Small hints from older pastors saying there were higher levels of spiritual power, levels only those who wanted true growth could access. I ignored those warnings at first. But the pressure to grow was too much. People compare ministries. People mock pastors whose churches are small. And I didn't want to fail. One day, I watched a pastor lay hands on a woman, and she screamed like something entered her body. The prophecy he gave her was so accurate that even I got scared. But what terrified me the most was that I knew this man. I knew he was not living clean. Yet the power he displayed was stronger than anything I had ever seen in church. That was the first time I realized something was wrong. The miracles were too sharp. The crowds were too sudden. The money flowed in too easily. And the spiritual atmosphere around him did not feel holy. It felt heavy, like a shadow was sitting in the room. You see, as the theme works, I started noticing more signs. Pastors disappearing for days and coming back more powerful. Prophets saying they received angels, but the presence around them felt more like darkness. Church workers collapsing during prayer in ways that didn't feel normal. But I refused to accept the truth. I told myself, maybe this is how God works. Maybe I am the one who is not powerful enough. I pushed aside the fear. I ignored the warnings. And I kept searching for the secret behind this prophetic power. That search, that hunger, that jealousy, is what led me to the place where everything changed. Because in the prophetic world, once you start looking for power, someone will notice you. Someone will approach you. Someone will tell you there is a deeper place you can enter. And they will offer to show you the way. I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of the road that would later lead me to shrines, altars, sacrifices, and things no human being should ever witness. You see, my story truly begins the night they took me for spiritual empowerment. A night that opened the door to darkness I would regret for the rest of my life. The night everything changed began like a normal church meeting. We were praying, we were worshiping, we were doing what every prophetic church does on a Friday night. But something felt different. The room felt thicker than usual, like it was hiding something. The senior pastors called me aside. They told me I was ready for higher power, ready for spiritual empowerment, ready to join the real world of prophets. And in that moment, I felt a mixture of pride and fear. I wanted power. But I didn't know I was walking straight into darkness. They blindfolded me. They said it was part of the process. I didn't argue. I wanted to feel important. I wanted to be among the great prophets people talked about. They put me inside a vehicle. I didn't know where we were going. The journey felt long. Too long. My heart kept beating faster with every passing minute. When the car stopped, they helped me out and removed the blindfold. What I saw did not look like anything related to God. In front of me was a huge compound hidden deep inside the forest. From outside, it looked like a retreat center or a prayer mountain. But the moment I stepped through the gate, you could feel something evil watching you. The compound was quiet. Too quiet. Inside the main hall, the floor was covered with symbols I didn't understand. Human skulls arranged in corners. Coffins standing upright like statues. Big mirrors hanging from the ceiling and walls, reflecting strange lights that didn't make sense. Every part of that place breathed darkness. I needed to run. I understand that. But you see, pride kept telling me to finish what I started. A group of men walked in, dressed in long dark robes. These were the elders, the ones who controlled the prophetic system in the country. They were the men behind the curtains, the real powers behind the churches people worship in. They began chanting. Slow, deep, heavy chants that felt like they were coming from under the ground. The air became hot and cold at the same time. My body felt weak. Then he entered. The man they call the godfather of prophets. The one every big prophet gets power from. A man people feared more than death itself. The moment he stepped in, I felt darkness. I had never felt such darkness. It was like the atmosphere bowed to him. They made me kneel. They placed my hands on a cold stone. Something sharp touched my skin. And right there, in that hall surrounded by skulls and shadows, I was forced to take an oath of silence. The oath meant I belonged to them. Not just spiritually, but physically. If I ever spoke, if I ever exposed anything, death would come for me. Not natural death, something far worse. After the oath, they told me the truth. They controlled hundreds of prophets. Big churches, small churches, rising prophets, famous prophets, all connected to this system. Every one of them came here for power. Every one of them made sacrifices. Every one of them bowed to the same darkness. I realized in that moment that the prophetic word most people admire is built on secrets too dangerous to speak about. I stood there, shaking, trying to understand what I had just become part of. My soul felt trapped. My spirit felt heavy. And my eyes were open to a truth I wish I never saw. That night, I entered a shrine disguised as a prayer retreat. And from that moment on, I was no longer just a pastor. I was part of a system fueled by blood, fear, and darkness. The road ahead would only get worse. You see, sometimes when you talk about these things, people think you are just making up stories. But for me, the night I witnessed my first sacrifice is a night my soul will never forget. Everything in me changed that night. My faith, my fear, my understanding of what a prophetic ministry truly was, all of it was broken in one moment. They told me we were going for a midnight spiritual operation. They made it sound like deliverance. They made it sound holy. But the deeper we walked into the forest, the more my heart began to scream inside me. The compound looked different at night. The mirrors on the walls reflected the moonlight. The skulls seemed to be watching us. The silence felt like it was breathing. Every step I took felt heavier, like the ground was pulling me backward, warning me, begging me to leave. But I couldn't leave. I had already taken the oath. My life was no longer mine. At midnight, they brought someone's photo into the hall. It was a church member. A young person who trusted us. Someone who had come to church looking for hope, looking for healing, looking for a new beginning. When I saw the face, my heart broke. I had prayed for this person before. I had hugged them after service. I had told them that God loved them. Then, as if that was not enough, he was brought into the hall. But he was not brought for prayer. He was weak, barely conscious, his body heavy as if something had been given to him. I realized then that he had been drugged. Nothing in that hall felt like deliverance. Everything felt like death. The elders entered, dressed the same way they were during my initiation. Their faces carried no emotion, just cold focus. The entire room felt like it was waiting for something dark to happen. The moment I saw the knife, my entire body froze. My mind refused to believe what my eyes were seeing. I kept telling myself this couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening in something called a church. This couldn't be happening in a place where God's name was shouted every Sunday. But the truth was right there in front of me. When the act began, I felt my spirit leave me. My breath became tight. My legs trembled. My heart felt like it was being squeezed. Fear held me more tightly than chains. The moment the blood touched the altar, the entire room changed. A cold wave moved through my skin. It was as if something invisible had entered the room, something not human. The elders said this was the offering. They said the blood would attract the spirits that bring crowds, wealth, and prophetic accuracy. They said this was how churches grow. They said this was the real price of power. My stomach turned. My spirit collapsed. I realized I was standing in a place where human life meant nothing. Where souls were traded like objects. Where darkness was fed in exchange for fame and miracles. I felt sick. I felt disgusted. But most of all, I felt trapped. I knew from that moment that leaving this group was no longer an option. Not alive. Not easily. I watched them clean the altar. I watched them smile like nothing had happened. I watched them walk away as if they had just finished a normal church activity. But inside me, something died that night. I realized I was part of something too dark to understand. Something that would not let me go. Something that claimed my life long before I ever agreed. And from that night on, I was no longer afraid of demons. I was afraid of the prophets I once admired. You see, the darkness had fully opened its door. And I had stepped into it without knowing the true cost.
What you've just heard is more than a testimony, it's a warning. We are just entering into the dark moment in the episode 2. This man shared this so someone watching right now will open their eyes and escape before it's too late. If there's one thing you take from this confession, let it be this: protect your soul, protect your family, and test every spirit. Not every man of God is sent by God. We will meet in the next episode of this testimony. Stay safe, stay vigilant. And remember, the greatest battles are the ones we fight in the spirit.